having to revisit the question just on that basis. So I think, I mean, that's just what strikes me. And you know, I don't mind kind of challenging the process to the bottom of the ninth inning. We've gone this far on it. And I think I as much as I think it's time to build bridges within our own community, I think in terms of the performance at the state level, I think we may have an opportunity here to really demand the kind of accountability that we are always being challenged to demand of ourselves.
Mr. Farmer.
Chairman, I think the committee should assume that the June 24th letter will be in the packet that will go to the Board of Education for its September meeting. And the question then is, what will they do with that letter? I've already indicated that if I had received this letter as the Commissioner, I'd be profoundly embarrassed. And I suspect that there will be members of the Board who will look at this letter and come to the conclusion that between us we didn't do the right thing. And so the question then is, what do they do? And while the Joint Committee, as I understand it, says that they have no place to second guess, any member of the Board who voted to approve the charter school could ask for a reconsideration. We know that there is no time limit within which a member of the board can make that request. It's very different from the city council arrangements here, where there is a very tight deadline, and so clearly where there are connections with members of the board, alerting them to the fact that they are going to receive this document and will need to consider how they respond to it in public, if not on real-time television, it will be recorded. Certainly is worth thinking about in terms of what action you take, maybe informally rather than formally.
Michelle.
So on their agenda, they'll have you'll have an opportunity to speak. Do we want to get up and state our case again, or do we want to have people there speaking about the unfairness of the public hearing or the process that happened?
I think they've heard from us quite a bit. I'd like to hear from them. You know, like I said, the board, the deliberations, I don't even think that's the right word to use for what happened the day they voted. It was a couple people gave their, you know, like we do, I'm going to support this measure because, or I'm not voting because. They got through two people, and someone says, oh, Mr. Jones, or whoever he is, has to catch a plane, and then they just sped the whole process up, and there was no more input. So, I guess if they had input, all these other things that came to light wouldn't have been discussed anyway. But I think this motion sort of gives them a little nudge that we'd appreciate if they would do it. They don't have to, but I think I don't know how much further we could go with it, how much more of a demand we could make. I think the way it's worded is a polite way of, you know, helping us get to the point where we can move on.
My only other suggestion is if the motion were to pass, that it be captured in a letter from the committee articulating the context for the particular request and action, formal action by the school committee. And we should just think about what that letter might contain after. I think we should have that discussion after the vote on the motion, and who should read it and review and getting it circulated so everyone can see it before it goes out under the full committee's signature, which I would imagine that it would if the motion were to pass. If the motion fails, it's a moot point.
Okay, do you have more to add to this? Okay.
I'm wondering if we should think a little bit more as well on what Mayor Kirk said, that in fact, if, as the letter states, if that June 8th meeting now is being considered as a public hearing by Commissioner Chester and Chairperson Banta, then perhaps we could ask Suzanne Egan, our attorney, what the protocol is on a vote being required based if they're declaring that meeting to have been a public hearing, because that might be another avenue. So I'm wondering if it wouldn't be worth an hour of research on her standpoint to check that out for us, because I think that that's a noteworthy possibility.
Okay, well, I think to the mayor's point, we could take a vote on the motion. Should the motion pass, we could take it to the next step regarding a letter and the research. So if there's no further discussion on the motion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Now, to the point of how to communicate this to the board, I think at the very least we could include a little sentence that says, by the way, you've created this hearing, considering this hearing, there's just a little point. So to proceed, how to proceed, I'm open to suggestions. Yes.
I would be very willing to draft a letter to share it with the full committee for approval if the group wanted me to do that.
And to include the actual wording of the motion, and it passed, there were 7 of us, 7-0. Okay, that's great, and then we'll just circulate it. Amy?
I'm still torn as to whether, are we still at the point of a polite nudge if this is what we would like? Or, personally, I'm still to the point of, folks, you didn't do the right thing and you need to do this. I don't want to be rude in a letter, but I'm thinking a polite nudge might not quite be strong enough.
I think an elected body from the city hasn't got much more of a nudge than the Joint Committee on Education. So I don't know how much more than a polite letter. I don't think we need to pour acid on them,
As a secondary avenue that I feel like we should pursue and discuss as a full committee goes back to the recommendation of Representative Ferranti and Senator Tarr. And they are encouraging people to write letters to the governor. And I believe it would be worthy of discussion from where we stand that we could say we are supporting letters to the governor. However, we do want to move on and get closure to this. So, if we agreed as a full committee that we are supporting the letters as Representative Ferranti and Senator Tarr are suggesting, perhaps we could get consensus from our full committee that that is something that we are supporting. Possibly Chairperson Verga could send a letter to the 2 newspapers and request that if we all agree that that's an avenue that we want to take, because we do need the closure. And in the meantime, I would suggest in moving forward that we request of the superintendent that going forward that we're to be focused on upcoming events in the upcoming school year, and that if issues come up relative to this, that he check back with us in terms of seeking the okay on spending time on this, because I do think that we all need to start planning for the future. We can do a letter writing campaign independent of the work that we do on the school committee. However, when people are working for the district and there's so many things to be moving forward on, I think it's important that we set the expectations to be clear. We've done everything we can to prove our point at this point. I'm sure you agree with me, Superintendent. And at some point, if someone asks for a public record or something that you can provide, you have to accommodate that. But I'm just thinking that we just need to keep planning for the future and not continuing to dwell on this. We can do these other actions in parallel without affecting your workload.
Chairman, if I could respond to that. Much of what we know about this comes from work that I did quietly behind the scenes, and I shall continue to do that. I still have questions arising from statements made by the Commissioner's Chief of Staff. I've asked questions about that, and I don't need to do that publicly.